Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Shall we begin? Linelda, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossett Simon isn't here yet. Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Here.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Torcivia.
Here.
Okay, will we rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Linelda, do we have any public comments?
No public comments today.
Okay, we will close the public comment section and move on to new business. The first is resolution number 2021-023. That's the resolution of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, calling for a special election regarding the establishment and funding of the Highland Beach Fire and Rescue Department. It's open for discussion. John, we'll start with you.
Okay, so, boy, I did spend some time thinking about this over the weekend. On this first question, my question is, should we define what fire and rescue apparatus and equipment is? Does that include vehicles? Because if it does include vehicles, then I'm wondering, do we take the 10 million to 12 million?
Marshall and I spent a good deal of time reviewing a week by week action plan as well as expenses. We also laid in what that equipment included, which was inclusive of the 2 vehicles that were necessary. And then we reviewed it one more time when Evelyn asked us if the 10 million was adequate, thinking maybe we should look at 11 or 12 million. So we went back through it. Actually, it was a third time. Okay. And the $10 million does include it, and it is adequate.
Okay, I didn't know that you had done all of that, and that's
Yeah.
a good confirmation.
Definitely fair question. No question about it.
And so if that's the case, do we, just for the sake of our residents and to ensure that we have good communication, should we put in a parentheses after apparatus and say, including vehicles? Just because apparatus may not, to some people in town, mean a fire truck and an EMS vehicle.
I would not do that. I think that will make it messy as opposed to clean. Because you don't, if you define things specifically, it limits you. And you don't want to limit.
But we're including it. That's all we're
Yes,
doing is
but-
clarifying the
but
meaning of
what
the
we're
word
talk-
apparatus.
Yeah, but what we're saying is that it's $10 million to set us up so we can get it,
Yeah.
our engines running and have everything in place.
But if you would ask any citizen on the street, pull them off and say, what does fire apparatus mean to you? I would bet that 8 out of 10 would not mention trucks.
See, and to me, apparatus means trucks.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came into my mind.
Okay, well, then I come from a different world because there's no way that that means it to me. But again, I'm posing it as a potential add where after apparatus, comma, including vehicles, comma, and equipment. That's all. If you think that that doesn't clarify enough for the average resident who is not legally, aware of what terms like apparatus means in this world, then we don't have a problem. But I think there is an important element here where we want to be very clear so we don't confuse most of our residents who might say apparatus. What does that mean? Like, stuff they hang on them or hoses or oxygen tanks or, and then, it doesn't mean a truck, especially an EMS truck as opposed to a ladder truck, as opposed to a regular fire truck.
Well, but you're not going to spell all of that out.
No, but
Because-
that's why I say including vehicles. Just those 2 words.
John, is this a result of feedback that you've gotten?
Yeah, I did ask, well, 3 people, so I wouldn't say that's a big source of data.
No, my point is, did they ask you about vehicles or did you ask them about vehicles?
I asked them what apparatus means to them in the fire world.
Okay, so you brought it up.
Yeah, I did bring it up. And so they said apparatus, and it was things I just mentioned, like oxygen tanks and hoses and axes. They didn't mean, yeah, it's an axe, right? It's apparatus. It's just, well, you need ladders, right? I said, no, okay, well,
Well, but all of that really falls under equipment.
yeah,
Okay,
that's exactly right.
I got a lot of feedback from
Oh.
multiple people,
Okay.
but not on the first question. I got it on the second question.
Oh, second question,
Yeah.
I'm just dealing with the
And we're
first one
not
right
on that
now.
yet. But first question, the feedback I got was clean and in favor of it.
Okay.
But let's move it on.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
With your looking back and making sure that the $10 million is sufficient, by the time we are up and running in roughly 3 years, will we need to replace the ladder truck and the ambulance that we have now? And maybe we should consider putting in that we may need to replace them because they will be 10 years or so old?
That's a great question. The requirement to replace those, and jump in if I'm wrong, please, is probably 3 to 4 years after we take over. We take over May of 24, replacement looks like around 27. Want to jump in on that, please?
I would say that that's correct. I would hope we could get more, but you probably are going to be faced with one piece of those 2 pieces of equipment. Maybe not the ladder truck, but definitely the rescue is going to be, because that's the highest use. Will probably be up against its life cycle in that first 5 years of operation, somewhere in there. So
So I kind of picked the middle.
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
All right, so then how would we fund it when we need to replace them?
Well,
That's question 2.
That's going to come up in a major discussion we have to have after we get through the first question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay, did
Otherwise,
anybody else
I
get
have
any
no issue.
feedback on the first question, not the second one? Yep, go
Mayor,
ahead.
pardon my being late. We had trucks at our
No
entrance
problem.
blocked me. Good trucks, work trucks.
First question. only,
Yes, your
please.
first question, Commissioner Shoemaker is not wrong. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, apparatus means equipment.
Right. Did you get any feedback on the first question?
My feedback is no matter how we write it or define it, people are concerned that their taxes will go up. That's all I hear.
Okay.
Yeah, so regarding the 10 million, I'm a little confused on, so let's say we lease the trucks. How do we account for that $10 million? So let's say the leasing costs $100,000 a year versus $1 million upfront. How does that impact that $10 million?
We put the million in, not the leasing cost,
Okay,
figuring worst case scenario if we bought it outright.
okay. So the 10 million would include the present value of any kind of leasing arrangement for any equipment or apparatus
That is
that
correct.
we get. And what's the timeline of the 10 million? So, I mean, this kind of gets at the question of equipment that we need 3 or 4 years down the road. I mean, I guess I thought this was just to cover to get us up and running.
That's the 10 million is out of pocket as of the 24th, as of 2024, May 2024. Money that would be spent. Now, we may not actually spend all of that because we might end up leasing instead,
Right.
but it would be committed funds.
Okay.
Might call that the better term.
Okay.
Correct me if you disagree at all.
Yeah, there's no timeline on spending the funds once authorized. You got 10 million to bring it up. So if you leased it, you're just pushing the 10 million down the road so, I mean, you could do it in many different ways. And it does include a contingency. So it's a comfortable number.
But we didn't want to deceive the voters or anybody because it is committed money.
My only other input, Mayor, would be if we feel that the marketing and explanations leading into the vote will be sufficient to define where the funds are coming from, because again, people are concerned about a hike in taxes, a substantial hike in taxes, or putting us at risk with loans, bonds, et cetera. Should we further define where the 10 million is coming from, or do you feel that'll be covered going into the vote?
Be covered in the educational campaign.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yep.
I'm just pointing out. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, anything else on question one before we pass it?
Well, Natasha, how did you feel about apparatus versus vehicles?
This is the
I-
first time I've ever heard any question about vehicles, was right now. And if we were to change it, it'd be as a result of 3 people. I don't think that's enough to make a change, in my
Well,
opinion.
I agree. I just wanted to hear if Natasha had a comment.
It didn't occur to me about the vehicles. I mean, I don't know how it hurts by saying apparatus, comma, vehicles and equipment, but my initial read of that, maybe because I'm so into this whole process too, I did think that apparatus would include, I would have thought apparatus and equipment would have included the vehicles, but I don't know if Glenn has an opinion on whether or not adding vehicles.
Mayor, I think by then, as you're right. Oh, we have one.
Glenn, do you have an opinion?
Well, I agree with Commissioner David that if you put parentheses after apparatus, you might be limiting apparatus. But if you, as Commissioner Shoemaker said, if you just put a comma after it and said rescue apparatus, comma, vehicles and equipment, that seems a little more inclusive. I don't think you're restricting it then. If there's a sense that that creates a little more certainty in the minds of the voters that vehicles are definitely included, I don't see a downside to it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I see a major downside to it. I think we're responding to 3 people at the last second, and we're making another goddamn mistake. Excuse my language. We can't be doing this every second because 2 or 3 people say something that are prompted to say something. This has been the language for what, 3 weeks now? And all of a sudden, we're going to make a change when the feedback has been excellent. All the feedback we've gotten is people are in favor of this. Language has been out there. Nobody said anything negative about it. And here we are at the very last second responding to what 3 people say that have been prompted to say it. I think we're making a major tactical error here.
Also,
Because the next thing will be, well, what vehicles are you going to buy? Why are you going to buy another fire truck? What's wrong with the fire truck we have? How long is it going to last? What's that fire truck going to cost? What apparatus are you going to put on the fire truck? Oh, do we need that fire truck? Are you going to lease it or are you going to buy it? How much is it going to cost? Why you do? No. This has passed the test. Every piece of feedback we've gotten has been positive. Why are we putting anything else in the water here? I'm sorry, we're making a huge mistake here.
Also, I certainly wouldn't limit it to fire rescue vehicles because we're going to have to get a car for the fire chief.
Right.
So,
And
you
that's
know,
in the numbers.
the more you put in details, the more you tie your hands as to how you can set up this fire rescue department.
We cannot be responding to the last squeaky wheel. That's what previous commissions were doing, and they got themselves in trouble. And
Mayor,
I
I think we'll-
believe it's wrong to do it.
Mayor, I think we'll be fine. Apparatus can cover everything from the firefighters' breakfast to the building. So I think we should just let it fly here.
Let it fly. We're not
By then they'll
hiding
know.
things. We're just not getting ourselves in trouble.
Can I add an interesting side note? The old ladder truck that was replaced under Mayor Featherman's reign is still in service as a backup in Delray Beach.
Well, there
And
you
that
are.
thing is 38 years old, I believe, and it is backup. So these vehicles, they last. And I believe that question was covered by our consultant also, stating that we had plenty of life left. Just to throw that in. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll service them. We'll keep them in operation as long as reasonable. We're not going to waste money, but you start putting too much out there, you start getting more questions and you never get the job done.
So Mayor, if I could just respond.
Sure.
First of all, I wasn't prompted. I just really thought that apparatus by itself did not include vehicles.
Yeah,
And I
but
did-
I apologize if I went overboard to make a point.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that's fair. I'm just trying to say that as I read apparatus, it did not include vehicles in my mind. In fact, that's why I asked a few people, what does apparatus mean to you? And there was no hesitation. They did not think it was vehicles. So I was suggesting just adding 2 words. And I thought the purpose of the meeting here today was to review this one more time and edit it or get input if there should be any edits. Aside from that, I'm good with the question itself. Now, if we don't want to add the 2 words, fine. I'm just trying to alert you that I think there will be some question and concern where people will want to know, does that include these trucks and EMS trucks? That's all.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm good to go.
You did your job and you reported it back. And I am sorry, I got a little aggressive there. Okay.
And I never take offense.
John, I think that will be handled during our education. When people come and you give them, tell them what we're doing, how we're doing it. If they ask the question,
No,
then it would be made
it's
clear.
actually in the presentation that we're adding 2 more vehicles. We're going to have 2 ambulances, 2 fire trucks, you know. Clearly not hiding it by any means.
Okay, I gave you my input.
Okay. Anything else before I ask for a motion?
Mayor Hillman, do you mind me reading the title of it just for the public who may not be reviewing the agenda or have it in front of them?
Well, the resolution is number 2021-023. It's a resolution of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, calling for a special election regarding the establishment and funding of the Highland Beach Fire and Rescue Department. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion?
I move that we accept resolution number 2021-023.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, let us move on to the second question. The second question is resolution number 2021-024, resolution of Tyler Highland Beach calling for special election regarding the operation and funding of the Highland Beach Fire and Rescue Department. Now, I'm sure that we have all had phone calls and discussion on this one. And I know John had an interesting idea, so you want to articulate your thought, John?
Okay, again, in the spirit of just trying to give feedback, given that's, I think, the purpose of this meeting.
Yes.
We've already said basically much of the last line in the first question. So I would delete that would provide enhanced services that reduce costs and with town. We've already, stated that in question 1, number 1. And the second and more important part of this is I think citizen feedback has been specific in those cases where there was an emotional, if not maybe rational, but emotional and rational feedback that says this paragraph is allowing the commission to write a blank check, and not just this commission, but all future commissions, however they may trust this commission. And I believe we have earned their trust. Given the history of Highland Beach commissions and their failures and the broken trust, this highlights the concern in a way that is going to be a problem for us. So I was thinking, okay, they want to limit. We really don't want to limit either, okay? Because we need to operate a fire department. And we don't know exactly how much that's going to cost because we don't have it yet. And we can estimate and project and do a lot of things, but frankly, we don't know. So my suggestion is, and I'm wide open on this, and if you all want to say, forget it, you shouldn't do it, then fine. But I would suggest that as it reads, I'll pick it up, in the amounts determined by the commission at public meetings without further referendum, at that point, add, unless requirements exceed a certain percentage, X percentage of the town's operating budget. Operating budget, however, we might want to define that, and X percent, however we want to define that. It could be, I don't know, 5%, 10%, that suggests that we're not going to write checks in crazy amounts. Not only this commission, but all future commissions should stay within a reasonable allocation of our entire town budget, rather than a specific number. So I did not want to say a maximum of, $10 million a year. I don't want a not to exceed level as a dollar amount, but possibly as a percentage of the operating budget. So again, given that this meeting was pulled together and we're coming off a multi-day meeting in Orlando, so clearly we have this last minute effort and chance to rethink these questions before today's the last day, as I understand it. Because of I don't know if the town understands this, the residents, we're really dealing with deadlines that we don't have any chance to push. And if we don't hit this deadline, then it's a problem. We can't have a referendum.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we table this second referendum? We can do it at another time. It doesn't have to be done right now. Maybe when we have more of an idea what it's going to cost to run it. And let's just get referendum one dealt with and not, again, muddy the waters and confuse people with two different things that sound similar. Just put it off for another election.
Excellent segue from my second part. And then the thought came, okay, why do it at all? Here's what I feel. We have seen already enough, and we've talked enough, and we've gotten enough feedback from residents to suggest there's no question they want us to go forward with this fire department being a Highland Beach organized and operated entity. I don't think there's any question about that. And so there's a lot of power in people supporting that. So to me, why would you not leverage that positive with a question that I think can be approved? I believe that this will be approved as well, rather than wait to next March where we lose more time and then we have to deal with other controversial issues like the charter and however they may react to that. I can't forecast all of that, but I do know we're in a power position right now with a very positive planned action that we know everybody supports that I've talked to, and I've heard from this commission, everybody is getting feedback that's very positive. Let's leverage that and use it as, we'll go in with coattails with this second question that says all we're trying to do is restrict it to a certain amount of the budget. And then we can pick that number. And that's where I would look to our town manager to provide what's a reasonable number to put down that we would expect to spend for operating a fire rescue department. And I think that both will get approved. So my initial thought was to go along with your idea, but then I said, wait a minute. I mean, we've got a winning card here. Let's play it.
All right, well, then I have a different suggestion as to the not to exceed limit, which is to tie it into what our other option would be. If we didn't do it ourselves, we would have to go to the county. So why don't we say not to exceed what we would spend if we had to go to the county? Because that would be our only other option at this point.
That's reasonable.
Well, excuse me, would you not to go to the what?
The county.
The county.
Oh, gotcha.
So if
For
we
fire
tie
support.
it into something where it would cost more money, but if that's our only other option, other than funding it ourselves,
Okay.
then we have to know where we're going.
What we're really talking about here is the cost to either repair or replace a truck or an ambulance.
That's
Cost-
the major exposure that we're trying to
That's the
deal
ma-
with, right?
That's the major number. That's what we're exposed to. And I don't really know what the cost is to buy a new truck, but around 1 million, 1.2 million, somewhere in that world. So we could take your idea, John, and say, to repair or replace a vehicle. Now, the reason that you got this future election dates piece of paper in front of you, you can obviously add November of 2024 to it. We all know there's an election coming up then. So not including November of 2021, we have minimum five shots at this, not including the one that's in front of us. So why do it now and take a chance of confusing people? The calls I got were calls questioning question 2. What is that? What's that all about? People got nervous about giving you the 10 million if you also got open-ended to spend what you want. And then they started to have a second thought about question 1. Seems to me as though we should do question 1 as we've approved, leave it, get that bagged, put that behind us. Then we have five times in front of us to get question 2 figured out. We got plenty of time to test different alternatives on it. We can take the idea we have in front of us. We can take another idea. We can do pre-testing on it, see if people understand it, see which ones they like, which ones they don't like. We also have in front of us the charter. If the charter ends up at, let's say, 10% of operating budget, and by the way, if you were watching, what's being recommended by the Charter Review Board is 10% of the combined budget, which in my opinion would never pass because they want to do the combined budget. We're talking then about over $2 million,
No,
which number 1 is not needed.
I know,
And 2 is far too aggressive, in my opinion.
absolutely.
Just as a side note, we couldn't find any town that has a limit on what the commission can spend. The only one that we could find was Palm Beach, but that was some formula of their tax base would end up being millions of dollars. Okay. But our town has a history and we need to honor that history. So we do need to have a limit. There's no question. So hypothetically, if that limit was 10% of the operating budget, we don't have any issue. Because then we have $1.2 million. With $1.2 million, we can make a commitment to lease an ambulance or a truck.
And that would obviate the need.
We don't need a question 2.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, we're looking at May of 2024 before we take over responsibility, and probably another 3 years before we even need to replace one of the vehicles.
Mayor,
Yeah.
if I would like to support what you just said about other towns not having a spending limit. I would also like to point out, I don't believe question 2 is lawful under our charter because you can't change the charter by referendum by 1 point here without changing and revising the whole thing, which is in the works.
Well,
I don't believe we can
there's an
make a
interesting
statement.
situation.
The charter is like our constitution. The charter is the Constitution of the United States on our version. And we cannot say without further resolution in a referendum, we have to change the charter first. And you're absolutely right. I must have asked 20, 25 people if at last weekend's meetings, if they have a cap on their spending, and they thought I was crazy. I said, well, I don't think I'm
Yeah.
that crazy. And so you're right, but and it was put in 30 years ago. And so with inflation, we would be at something like 730, 720, 725 for our
Well-
limit today, because it was put in 1990 by my neighbor.
Well, at that time, it was approximately 10% of the operating
It was
budget.
10%, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And he said it was put in because there were people so upset. This is Vice Mayor John Rand, since retired. And he stated that it was installed because there were just a few people saying, oh, we don't want you guys spending too much. There were a couple of lawsuits they had to settle. And so they said, no, we're going to be efficient and cap it at 10%. Then they reviewed this in 2014 and made the mistake by accident of putting in the change of the charter review by putting it in by referendum. And that was already struck down. So we would be doing the same mistake as 2014. And we are all up here to do our jobs on behalf of the town, and that's it. And so I want the people to know that we are not here to circumvent anything.
No, of
So we
course
will
not.
get back to this after the charter review. I agree with Commissioner David, we don't need number 2.
No.
We don't need to be challenging our charter and challenging our lawfulness. We're good to go with one.
So there are a number of reasons. There's another one, not to do it right now. So I think we just drop it, just eliminate it for now, do our homework, take our time. And we have, we've got plenty of years and plenty of shots at it. And that's just until we take over. And we don't even need it when we take over. We still have a couple of years before, that's assuming we don't have a major breakdown. The other thing to keep in mind is we have to get language to the supervisor of elections about 2.5 months before the election itself. Like we have to get it now for November. Well, if we have a breakdown and it's going to cost more than whatever our cap is, if it's less than 2.5 months before an election, we have to wait until the next election before we can have a referendum to get permission to spend the money. Then we have to get it repaired. So if there's no election for another 6 months, let's say, we can be out 8 months before we even put it into repair. And if we're going to buy a new one, or lease it, what have you, it can be 8 months before that occurs. It can be 4, 5, 6+ months before we receive it. So we can be a whole year without the vehicle. If that occurred, we could lose mutual aid because we're not able to service what our commitment was. So we absolutely have to get question 2 right. And we absolutely have to be able to spend the money without going to referendum, one way or the other, because we cannot wait that kind of time to replace one of the vehicles. Just cannot do that
I have a question.
because we can't operate without mutual aid and we can't operate without the 4th vehicle. So we've got to figure some way properly to skin this cat.
Yeah, I have a question. I thought we already had the authority to spend the money to operate. Like, how is it that we could, in the past, commit to the Delray Beach contract without referendum? How was it that we could commit $4 million+ a year without voter approval? Isn't that under the authority of us operating fire rescue?
So under your charter, one of your powers, enumerated powers, is to operate a fire rescue department. But the charter doesn't say how you can. So you selected, this community has selected over the years to use a interlocal agreement to provide said service. So that's a lawful ability to do it. Now you bringing it back on under the umbrella of our operations, you don't need voter approval to continue to operate and change how you operate and those costs associated. It's all capital is what our charter basically limits our ability to undertake capital projects, if you will, over 350,000. Because we're not expanding service. If we never did fire and decided now we want to do fire, then we would need voter approval to expand services, but we're not expanding services. We're just internalizing the service.
Yeah, so when we have a new police vehicle that we need to get, or a new vehicle for the building department, why is it that we don't need voter approval?
It's less than
for that?
It's less
350,000.
than 350.
Yeah, but so it doesn't fall under, it doesn't expand. We already have approval to operate. It doesn't expand our
To
services. So
include apparatus and equipment.
Yeah. So basically anything over 350 is what we're asking the voters for. And we have some big ticket items to bring the fire department online. Fire station, a couple of trucks that cost sizable amounts of money, other type of capital improvements. But you don't need voter approval to hire personnel, to do the personnel part, operate uniforms. All that stuff is already captured in the charter under the enumerated powers.
Yeah, I would guess under the charter, if we were just to try to stay legal, if you will, we would only be asking for the amount to build out the fire station and the amount to buy 2 vehicles.
Correct.
However, we want the population, we want the electorate to know what the all-in cost is to do this, to bring it in-house and run it. That's why we're telling them it's $10 million. We could say it's only, maybe it's 6 million hard costs and 4 million soft costs, but we're telling them the whole story, not just the capital part.
In the first question, why the
Yeah.
second? So why do we need the second question? The second question to
be-
operate.
Because down the road, we have capital costs, which are the fire trucks and the ambulance.
Isn't that true for everything?
No, that's because those are over $350,000. If we didn't have a spending limit, or if our spending limit, let's say, was $1.5 million, we wouldn't need the second question.
Well, then I would say we are at way too early of a stage to have any idea what
That's-
that will be.
That's why I'm
I-
saying,
yeah,
let's not do it now.
Absolutely, absolutely. We
Yeah.
have no idea at this point in time.
And we all
what
agree on
that's
that.
going to be.
And we have plenty of time
Right,
to figure it out and to
Absolutely.
even test the question.
absolutely.
Mayor,
Yeah,
to back what Vice Mayor Moore was saying, I researched this in 2019, and there were in fact some precedents in the state of Florida whereby extremely high raises in fire rescue or any kind of a contract could have and should have required referendum. There is precedent on the books in the state of Florida, in the Attorney General opinion, that in the past 32 years of this, it possibly should have gone to referendum, but that's history now. And so her point is well taken, that
Okay.
we're correcting all of those missteps in the
yeah.
past.
I mean, I think anything legal or not legal requirement, anything that has a major effect on our electorate, our citizens, they should have a voice in it. And we should tell them everything. And that's what
It
we're
needs
doing.
updated though.
Yeah.
We're,
that's what
we're
doing.
working on a 30-year-old cap.
Yeah,
And I would just emphasize, they do have a voice. We have public comments that are available at every single meeting.
Right.
We listen to the residents. So there are multiple opportunities for people to provide their input. And we listen. So, yeah, I'm in favor of not including the second question.
okay. I think we need a motion then to eliminate this.
I move that we table resolution number 2021-024 until a more appropriate time.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think that concludes our meeting. It is 10:38.